All right, we're going to carry on. So now that we have a way to get all the input values and let the person pick, we need to now output those somehow. So I'm going to just put some commenting here. Output, display, our RGB string, meaning whatever numbers they put, the person should know that. And update color preview. Now, believe it or not, I think it's actually easier to start changing these numbers first. So if I just go down a little bit, the RGB string I'm talking about is this right here. I think it's actually easier to start building that first. And maybe we'll even put that as its own commenting here. So we'll do a process in the middle. And so that's building the red, green, blue string as red, green, blue. And if you look, it's underscore. Well, we're going to use underscores as placeholders here. Okay, so that is what we want our end thing to look like. And the reason we're going to make it look like that is if we go to our style sheet and we look at the red, green, blue, that's also the form it's in. So we kind of want it to be the same. So to start making that then, we're going to make a variable for a string. So red, green, blue, string. And we're going to start concatenating some parts here. So just some regular text, red, green, blue again. And then what we want to be here. So what this is our red value. Now our red value is stored in a variable. So I'm just going to type this without any of that in there. So like I want the R value. And then I want our next middle one needs to be the green value. And then our third one needs to be the blue value. And that would be the end of our sentence. The problem is right now is these are strings, not variables. So we want these to be the variables. This is just a string, meaning regular words. So to stop it being a string, you end the quotations. And now you can see these turn back to variables. So if I put a plus sign here, it's actually going to add whatever is stored inside this variable. It's going to get added to the string. Then I want this comma. So I actually need to add apostrophe, comma, and then I do want a space there. So you have to make sure that space is actually there. So you can see the color, it's a string, and then we've got a variable that we want, which is the green. So I'm going to put a plus. And then I need a comma. That's not part of the value. So I'm going to put down in quotations a space. Oops. All right, so then finally we need our last value, so plus. And our final thing is we need our end of brackets here. So I'm going to put a plus again and turn this into a string using quotations. Ooh, so there we go. So now let's just output that to make sure that looks proper. So I'm going to console.log that RGB string. Oh, that's camel casing. And it's a variable, and there we go. Okay, so it should run string literal. Okay, RBG string. So string literal, it has to do something here. I think I forgot a plus sign here between this variable and our other string. So now it should work. And yeah, there we go. So now it's still showing us our colors that it should be. Let's just make sure they actually work and change. And then we are going to look at our HTML for that. All right, so let's just change one of these values just to make sure everything works. Again, incremental programming, and yes, 155 now, 155. Looks good. Okay, so let's put this back to what it was. And so now that we have this string, all we need to do is put this value here into the appropriate places. So one of those places is actually our color display that we have. So this color display. So if we go to our style sheet and we actually called it display. Perfect. So I'm just going to call that ID and I'm going to change the property of its background color. So go to the script. So I'm going to use my document dot get element by ID. And this, I call it display. Display. And now I'd say the property that I want to change. And that property is its style and its background. And I want it to be equal to that string that we made. So red, green, blue string. Okay, let's see if that works. So if good, nothing's changed. But if I go to my HTML and I change what these values are. So where is this? Let's put this 1. Let's just put this 0 and see what happens. We hit run. And good. Yeah, now we've got a pure green color. Excellent. Okay. So now whenever we change these, not that it's going to do anything right now, we should now, that's the next part, is when we change these, it actually hits the preview button on those. Okay. Now the good thing is, because we're using the inputs already, so we are using these inputs, this red in, green in, blue in, that part's already done. So all that's really left is to change this number down here and make it so the button, this changes when we hit the button. This, we're almost there already, so we might as well do it. We have to go and see what that is. Let's go HTML, and that is our, oh, right here. Okay, so we used a class tag on it. Now we don't want this class tag to go to both things, so you can put a class and an ID on something. So I'm going to give it an ID as just red, green, blue string. Okay, so now I've got an ID and a class for it. And here, let's just make it, there we go. So now if I go to my JavaScript, something very similar. So the document dot get. This time we called that our RGB string. And what do we want to change about that? We want to change its inner HTML. So inner HTML. And I want it to also be the same as the RGB string. There we go. So now this value that we have in this console log should also go here. If I hit run, nothing should change. Let's go and just change the HTML for a second. So where do we define those values again? Just change this one to 100. And if I hit run, so it's a little bit more green. And yeah, it actually does say 155 now. Perfect. That's what we want. Okay, so the very last thing then is just to make this preview button actually work. Now we haven't done this yet, and it's going to be using an event listener. So you've done this in Computer Science 10 using like mouse clicked, but that was very general. This is a little bit better because we can control where on the screen was pressed. So I'm going to say this is our event listener. Sorry. And we want it to be that button. So I think there's only one button on there. Yeah, there's only one button. And so we called it just button, I believe. Just double check though. That I didn't for some reason make it called something else. No, it's just called a button. Perfect. So let's go to our script. And so we have to say we want to talk about that. So document dot get element by ID. We are talking about our button. And now this is a little bit different. Now we're going to add something. So we're going to add event listener. Now the first thing is, what do I want to happen? So if it's clicked, and then I have to choose a function. So that is a problem. We haven't actually written any functions yet. Now in Computer Science 10, we did make a function. So all to do that in JavaScript, you just type in function. And I'm going to call this our red, blue, green preview function. So you do need open bracket, close bracket. We will put parameters in there later on, and then some open and curly brackets. So what's going to happen is every time now that I say right in here, red, blue, green, preview, whatever's inside of this code box is going to run. So every time we click that button, that should run. And I'll just do a console.log, and just put run, just so we know that it's actually working. So let's see. Oh, we've got an issue is null. So it's saying it's in line 2, which makes sense. That's what we just added. Oh, yes, because this isn't actually an ID. This is just a tag. So we have to go to the HTML and actually give it an ID. So here, we'll just say ID equals btn. There we go. Go back to our JavaScript and just call this btn. There we go. So if I hit run, now it has no problems. And if I just scroll down and hit preview, every time I hit it, it's saying run. But if I click anywhere else, it's not working because I'm only adding the event listener to this button, exactly where the button is. So every time I hit the button, it hits run, and it's running this function every single time. The thing is, we don't actually want it to just say console.log. We want it to take in all of these values. So we don't want this to change, this color to change, until the person actually hits preview. So we'll take in all that information at that moment. So we're going to cut this, and we're going to put that inside of our function. So now when I hit run, now it's going to be angry about something else. Okay, so it's saying, so on the 14th line, well, why is it angry? Because these are not defined here. So the problem is it can't do this right now. So we're going to just delete that. You could also comment it out. And now it's saying it's 17. This isn't defined either, which means we have to just give it an initial value, or we want this kind of to run this output when we hit that button. So rather than play around with other ways, we can actually just put all of this in our function. Meaning, when I run this function, it's going to get these values, then it's going to build the string, then it's going to output it accordingly. So let's try that. Okay, there we go. So nothing's happening. I hit preview, and it changed to the 155. So let's see if we actually change this to 100 then. We hit preview. Perfect. There we go. Now I think I must have changed the original HTML in this to 155. Let's change that back to 255. There we go. Now everything looks proper. All right, there we go. And we're all done with that.